Wool is a very natural product that is very renewable. I tend to think of it as nature's gift to us. The idea of sheep to shawl really started out as a social event where women would come together after the shearing, and they'd wash the wool, and then they'd card it and spin it into yarn, and then generally they would weave it into a shawl. It evolved over the years into an activity at the county fair for families that raise sheep. And now you have teams that practice all year long and do a lot of work to figure out all their strategies and get the right number of spinners and the right number of weavers, and that's sort of where it's at now. Generally, after the wool is shorn, then it has to be washed, and depending on the kind of wool that you have, then you might need to scrub it pretty hard. Some of the modern sheep, some of the white sheep, have a lot of what's called lanolin, the same material they make hand lotion out of, and it has to be washed at a temperature of about 180 degrees, and what that does in essence is melt off all the lanolin that's on there. And then after it's been cleaned and dried, then they comb it, or we call it carding it, and you can put it through big machines and it just lays the fiber out straight, and so it can be spun up like this. This is called roving, and this is after it's been carded, and obviously this has been dyed. And you can dye the wool and then put it into roving, or you can put the roving and dye the roving itself, or you can actually dye the yarn when you're all done spinning it. Depends on what you're trying to make your yarn for.
This machine is a carder. What it does is it takes wool that has been shorn from the sheep, it's been washed, it's been picked until it's in this form, which is just a bunch of fluffy, clean wool. And when we run it through the carder, it's just like having a bunch of combs on a motor, and it aligns all the fiber so that it's straight. It probably takes 5 minutes to do 2 ounces of fiber with the motorized machine, whereas it would probably take at least an hour to do 2 ounces with a couple of brushes. Can I get you to grab that in and hold on to it? Keep it off the floor. Thank you. Roving has several uses. You can either spin it exactly like it is into yarn and make whatever, scarves or hats or sweaters, or you can dye it. They make felt. They make about 1,000 different products. Anything that's made out of wool has to start in this form.
In ancient times, what you'd find is that the men were the first spinners, and they would be out with their flocks, and while they were watching their flocks, they'd pick up wool that the sheep shed, because back then they didn't shear sheep. The sheep actually shed the fur or the wool onto the ground, and they'd have something as simple as a round rock with a spindle down through it, and they would do their spinning. Obviously, this is a fairly modern wheel, and it does the same function though. I mean, the function of spinning is nothing more than putting twist into fiber.
I am using a drop spindle. This is a way of spinning wool. It's an ancient way of spinning wool. It started mainly with a stone and a stick. This is made from a dowel, a grommet with a disc on it, CD on it, and a hook. You spin it up. When you get it long enough, you just take it off the hook and wind it back up on the bottom of the disc. And then you'll have some wool later on.
This is your natural color to start with. This is what you could have just with a package of Kool-Aid. You can get vibrant colors, and one package of Kool-Aid will do approximately half a pound of wool. We end up, and each color of Kool-Aid and a little bit of vinegar makes it color fast. You can put it out in the sun, it doesn't fade, it doesn't leach. Any color of Kool-Aid that you buy, you can get. The good thing about Kool-Aid dye is once you use it, you don't have to worry about the safety of your children. It's Kool-Aid, they drink it. So once you dye in the pots on the stove, you can take it out and make spaghetti in it if you want, then you've got colored spaghetti.
So I do all my dyeing right here in the kitchen. This is about 2 ounces of Icelandic wool that's already been washed, and it's ready to be soaked and then put in the dye pot. And we soak it in this soapy water, and that just helps the dye move around. You can just put it down in there, and generally what I do is I just set it in there when I start getting my pot ready. And eventually what we'll end up with is a green wool, because I'm going to over dye it with cyan. So then I just take my pot, set it here in the sink, fill it up with water. I carry it over to the stove, put it on high heat. We never boil our wool because that'll turn it into felt. And then I have to add the 2 ingredients, the dye, which is in my jar, and it's already mixed up. And I just use these syringes to draw some dye out. And how much dye I use depends on the color of the wool and the intensity of the color that I want to get. And then I just add it into here. And then the agent that makes the dye molecules bind to the wool is actually just nothing more than distilled white vinegar. And I just pour vinegar in there. And generally I add a cup or 2. And then my dye bath is ready to add my wool to. And in a few minutes, as soon as the wool's soaked, I'll add it in there and then we'll cook it. And now what I'll do is I'll go over and I'll drain the water off my wool and add it to the dye bath. And one of the things that I'm always careful is that whatever instruments I use that actually get dye on them, I never use them for cooking, because even though the pigment in the wool is about the same as we use in Kool-Aid, you can never be too careful. So you just squeeze most of the water out of it. And again, by wetting it, it helps the dye molecules move around and actually bond to the wool. And then I just gently put it in there. One of the characteristics of Icelandic wool is that it felts really easy, so we're careful. And again, I have wooden utensils that I use for nothing else but this. And normally what I do is I add the wool, and then I'll bring it up to just below a boil, and I'll turn it off and let it set in the pot overnight. But you can see already that the green is dyeing the wool.
We're felting bars of soap, and this is the end product. This is wool around a natural soap. And at the beginning, it's just a bar of soap and some wool around just wrap it around. And all we have to do is put it in the bag and put some water, like about 1/4 of a cup of water, and try to get as much air out of the bag. Just pretty much rub it, like just agitate the wool, and this is what it does. Like, the hot water agitates it, and you usually do this until it's tight around the bars, and it's about 5 to 10 minutes, depending. The buffalo is a lot harder. It's like takes longer than the like merino and the Icelandic.
Really the popularity of wool has come full circle. I mean, it used to be the #1 way that people made clothing. And now it's become very popular because there are a lot of people that have taken up knitting. Spinning is enjoying an incredible new popularity. And instead of large commercial flocks, what we're seeing is people that raised, 5, 10, 50 sheep, and they specialize in spinning fiber. And people are finding out that, natural fibers can be renewed much more easily than synthetic fibers. And also a lot of people are finding that there's just a lot of peace and enjoyment, spending time spinning or spending time gathering, much like the early people did in sheep to shawl competitions, coming together and spinning and sharing that culture.